So you're thinking about opening a restaurant in Dammam. Ambitious. And with Dammam's food scene being as impressive as it is, well, let's just say you're going to need every bit of help you can get.
For sure.
Which is why we're diving headfirst into this blog post you sent over. Opening a restaurant in Dammam, 10 mistakes not to make.
Avoiding those common mistakes, those pitfalls, it's absolutely essential. But it's more than just knowing what not to do. It's about really understanding why those choices matter, especially in Dammam.
And that brings us to mistake number 1, missing the mark on local demand. I mean, it sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but I have a feeling it's about more than just, serving good food.
You hit the nail on the head. Dammam has this really interesting blend of traditional tastes and modern influences. You can't forget about the role of family here either. Family-style dining is huge, so if you can nail a restaurant that can comfortably fit those larger groups, you're off to a good start.
That makes total sense. I'd probably be so busy trying to pick out, the trendiest chairs that I'd completely forget some families need space for, 8 people at one table.
It's easy to get caught up in the aesthetics. And while we're talking about Dammam diners, the article also mentioned a growing demand for healthier choices. It's not just a global trend. It's definitely got a foothold in Dammam's food scene.
Right. So we need to cater to larger groups, keep the menu health conscious. Man, it's a puzzle, isn't it? I bet even with the perfect menu in a great location, there's a whole other layer of, red tape before you can even think about opening the doors.
You're not wrong. The world of permits and licensing, it can feel like a maze, especially for first-time restaurant owners.
So what are the essentials? What do people absolutely need to know?
The first one you'll need is your restaurant business license. That comes from your local municipality. Then you've got the health certifications from the Saudi Food and Drug Authority. Most people just call it the SFDA.
The SFDA, right. They're the gold standard for food safety in Saudi Arabia, aren't they?
They are. They make sure restaurants maintain strict hygiene and food handling standards. And speaking of regulations, we can't forget about Saudization.
Ah, yes, the article mentioned that. Something about making sure you hire a certain percentage of Saudi nationals, right?
It's called Nidakot. It's a key government initiative to boost local employment. So as you're building out your restaurant, keep Nidakot in mind. It's about finding great staff and making sure you're complying with the regulations.
It's noted. So we've got the demand figured out, got the legal side of things, at least a little less mysterious. But what about everyone's favorite real estate saying, location, location, location?
It's more than just a catchy phrase, A prime location in Dammam can make or break your restaurant.
Okay, so what does a prime location actually look like in Dammam?
You want to think about spots with high foot traffic. Bustling commercial centers are always good. But here's the thing. Residential areas in Dammam are important too. Locals like to eat out close to home, so don't discount the quieter neighborhoods.
So it's about balance then.
Exactly.
Being in the middle of the action, but also being convenient for people who just want a quick bite after work or a family dinner that's close to home.
Yes. And that's a big one where I see people making mistakes. They get won over by some fancy address in a high-rent district without considering the financial side of things.
High rent, not enough customers. That's a recipe for disaster.
Speaking of finances, I'm dying to get into the money side of this whole thing. The article called this section Underestimating the Financial Mountain, and man, can I relate to that.
It happens all the time. People get so caught up in those upfront costs, the kitchen equipment, the furniture, making sure the decor is Instagram worthy, that they completely space on the less obvious expenses, and those can really add up.
Like what?
Let's start with the lease. You'll probably need a security deposit, which is often 6 to 12 months of rent. Up front.
12 months? That's a full year of rent before you've even served your first customer. It's a serious chunk of change. And then there are the renovations. Those new counters, lighting fixtures, it all adds up.
This is giving me flashbacks to the last time I renovated my kitchen. It's always more expensive than you think it's going to be.
It's true. That's why this blog post really stresses the importance of having at least 6 months of working capital.
Now, working capital, I hear that term thrown around a lot, but to be honest, I'm not always sure what it means. Could you explain it?
It's like your restaurant's safety net. That buffer that helps you cover your day-to-day costs, rent, utilities, payroll, inventory, all that, especially during those first few months when you're still building a customer base and your revenue isn't really predictable.
So it's not just about those surprise expenses, it's about making sure you have enough to get through those potentially slower periods when you're first starting out.
Exactly. Think of it as an emergency fund, but for your business. And while we're talking about crucial parts of your business, we have to talk about branding. Mistake number 5 on this list is all about what they call brand blur, basically blending into the background and getting lost in the noise.
I can see how that happens. If you don't have a clear idea, a strong identity, your restaurant's just another restaurant, right? Like you walk in and it's just the same generic stock photos you see everywhere. A sad little salad, some kind of pasta dish that all looks the same. Or no thanks.
Exactly. Your brand needs to tell a story. Think about some of the really successful restaurants in Dammam. There's that one place in the Alhambra district. Their whole thing is that they do these really cool modern takes on classic Saudi dishes. And their decor is super minimalist, but they use these beautiful traditional fabrics. It's modern, but it's also got that connection to tradition. They've really nailed it.
Oh, I think I know exactly the place you're talking about.
Oh, there.
And their Instagram is amazing. Their food photos are like works of art, honestly.
Cool.
Speaking of Instagram, the post also called out something called the marketing mirage, which I'm guessing is not a good thing.
No, not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's that idea that as long as you have a great restaurant, customers will just magically show up. Like, you don't need to do any marketing.
Right.
You have to be strategic about it,
Yeah.
especially these days.
And especially in Dammam, since the article mentioned how digitally connected the city is.
Exactly. So Instagram, that's going to be huge for you. High quality food photos are an absolute must. Those really grab people's attention as they're scrolling through. But then you also want to think about SEO, making sure your restaurant actually pops up when people are searching online for places to eat in Dammam.
So the digital marketing is super important, but I did notice this article also mentioned something about more traditional marketing being important in Dammam too. Why is that?
Dammam's got a really strong sense of community, so those more traditional methods of outreach, those can be really effective. Think about partnering with the local food bloggers. They have a lot of influence. Maybe even some well-placed radio ads could be effective. Sponsoring a local event, having special promotions during Ramadan, things like that.
It's like that support local idea, but for the restaurant scene?
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, but even with amazing food, the best marketing in the world, if your restaurant is a nightmare once people actually show up, well, let's just say you're not going to get much repeat business. Which brings us to, dun dun dun, operational chaos.
The behind-the-scenes disaster. Because, listen, it doesn't matter how incredible your food is. If the service is terrible, the kitchen's a disaster, and your customers are waiting forever for their food, that's a problem.
Oh my gosh, I have a story about this. I went to this one place a while back. It was so highly recommended, but being there, it was like the kitchen was being run by a bunch of toddlers. Our orders were wrong. We waited forever to get our food. Then they brought us the wrong dessert menus. It was just the complete comedy of errors.
No.
It was unbelievable.
That's rough.
Yeah.
But, that's a perfect example of how important it is to have a really good system without one. Even the most promising restaurants can fall apart. The article really drove home how important streamlined workflows are.
So how do you avoid that kind of chaos? Is it just about having a million rules and a super strict manager?
It's less about being super strict and more about just having really clear systems that everyone's on board with. Like, just think about a really well-organized kitchen. Everyone knows exactly where their station is, what task they're responsible for. When you have that kind of clarity, it really minimizes mistakes and confusion.
It's like a dance, everyone moving together.
I bet technology can play a role here too, right? I'm imagining like some amazing software that manages all your reservations, tracks all the orders, maybe even helps with the inventory. All of that exists. There's some truly excellent software out there. The reservation and table management systems, they're amazing. You can avoid so many headaches. And don't even get me started on inventory management systems. Those can save you so much money and cut down on food waste.
It's like having a digital assistant whose only job is to make sure your restaurant runs as smoothly as possible. That's amazing. Okay, what's next on the list of things that keep aspiring restaurateurs awake at night?
Pricing, or as this blog post calls it, the pricing predicament.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one. As a customer, there's nothing worse than falling completely in love with some amazing sounding dish, only to see the price and realize, like, okay, that's my rent for the week.
It's a tough one. For the restaurant, it's this delicate dance of making sure you're covering your costs. Remember that 30-35% food cost target, while also being realistic about what the market will actually support.
You can't just charge whatever you want and expect people to come. So how do you find that perfect price point?
Value. That's the key. It could be that you're sourcing really high-quality, unique ingredients that justify a higher price, or maybe you create a really unique, memorable dining experience that people are willing to pay a little extra for. It's about giving people a really compelling reason to choose your restaurant, even if it means spending a little bit more.
Right, so it's about the whole package, the ambiance, the service, the whole vibe. Okay, so we've got pricing figured out. What else do we need to watch out for?
Let's talk about online reviews.
Oh man, yeah. Those online reviews, they can either make your day or completely ruin your week. The article called Ignoring Them, Ignoring the Digital Chatter, and honestly, I kind of get it. Sometimes it's easier to just not look, especially when the comment section gets a little wild.
I get it, but trust me, ignoring online reviews is a recipe for disaster, especially in Dammam.
Yeah, because everyone checks reviews before they try a new place these days.
It's true. And, when you respond to reviews, even the not-so-great ones, it shows people you're paying attention, that you care.
It builds trust, right? Like you're not just some big faceless company. You're a real person who's passionate about the food, about the experience, and you actually listen to what people have to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, even those negative reviews, as much as they might sting a little, they can be really useful.
Oh, tell me more.
Think of it as free market research. If you keep seeing the same complaint over and over again, maybe the service is too slow or a particular dish isn't great,
Yeah.
that's incredibly valuable information.
Okay, you've convinced me. Don't ignore the reviews. Use them to make your restaurant even better. Got it. So we've gone through a lot today. Market research, permits, that whole world, branding, the marketing side of things, running a tight ship so everything runs smoothly, and navigating those online reviews. It's a lot. But the one thing we haven't talked about yet, the heart of it all, the menu.
Oh, yes.
Mistake number 10 on this list is the menu maze, which for someone like me who takes forever to decide what to order, I totally get why that's a problem.
That's a common one.
We've all been there, right? You open the menu and it's like reading a novel. Endless options, long descriptions, and you end up just feeling completely overwhelmed.
It happens. And restaurants do it because they're trying to offer something for everyone. But they end up with these enormous menus that just confuse customers and make things way harder on the kitchen staff.
Oh, I bet. More dishes means more ingredients, more prep work. It just seems like a recipe for something to go wrong.
That's why the article stressed the power of keeping things simple. Having a really focused menu, one that showcases your strengths, that unique thing you bring to the table. That's where the magic happens.
So quality over quantity. But how do you decide what makes the cut? What stays on the menu?
Look at your sales.
Yeah.
What are people ordering the most? And pay attention to what people are saying, the feedback you're getting. What dishes are people really responding to?
It's like building your menu based on what's actually working, not just what you personally like best. That's so smart. But then how do you keep things fresh? Because people don't want to eat the same thing every time they come in, right?
You're absolutely right. You need to have some variety. And this is where the article had a really interesting suggestion. Seasonal specials.
Oh.
Right.
Dishes that feature seasonal ingredients.
Yes.
That way you're changing things up, keeping the menu exciting, but it's not a complete overhaul every few months.
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds.
I love that idea. Man, we have covered so much ground today. We talked about understanding exactly what Dammam diners are looking for, creating a strong brand for your restaurant, dealing with the permits and legal stuff, marketing, keeping your operations running smoothly, and how to handle all those online reviews. It's a lot, but you know what? You've made it all seem so approachable, so manageable.
That's always the goal. We want to take all the mystery out of this process and give new restaurant owners the tools they need.
I love it. But before we wrap things up here, I have to ask you this article's final thought-provoking question. Are you ready?
Hit me with it.
All right, so thinking about Dammam's diverse population and how much the food scene there is changing and evolving all the time, what unique niche could your restaurant fill? What would you do?
Man, that is a great question. And it's the question that everyone who's thinking about opening a restaurant should be asking themselves. What's that missing piece of the puzzle in Dammam? What can you offer that nobody else can?
It's about finding your voice, your unique style, your point of view, and then sharing that with the world one amazing bite at a time. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
It really is.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This was incredibly insightful and so inspiring.
Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening out there, dreaming about opening your own restaurant in Dammam one day, we are rooting for you. With a little planning, an understanding of what people want, and a whole lot of passion, you can make those dreams a reality.
Couldn't agree more.
And on that note, Happy eating, everyone. We'll see you next time, right here on The Deep Dive.